Well, hello. I want to thank you all for coming today, especially as it's so hot. So I apologize for the fans and the noise, but I appreciate your attendance. Again, I'm Kat Purcell. I'm the career librarian here at Champaign Public Library, and I'm really excited to have Claire here. She is a career advisor at the Geist College of Business at the University of Illinois, and has a decade of experience there. She's helping students with their career services on their journey, and happy to talk about how to tell that story when you're in a job search today. So thank you so much, Claire.
Yes, you're welcome. You might want to move closer if you can, just so that you can hear me. And I'd also love to hear from you, so I understand like who's in the audience. So yes, my name is Claire, and if you can hear me from here, you can stay. How is the sound? Okay, I can talk a little louder.
Solomon's gonna go get a handheld mic.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So yes, I work at the College of Business at the university. My main role is to work with college students, but I work with both undergraduate and graduate students. So our grad students have a range of years of experience, from like 1 year out to 10 years plus in all different areas of business. So I work with a lot of different age ranges. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is broadly applied, but also some of the examples will be more from a student perspective. So just kind of think about how you might apply that to some of your own experiences. So I'd love to hear from you all. Like, are we currently on the job search? Raise your hand if you're currently looking for a job. Okay, so we have 3 people currently looking. Are you thinking about your next steps?
I am a job coach in the area, so I'm just giving some resources.
Ah, cool. Where do you work?
It's called Community Voices.
Okay, nice. So you're kind of a career advisor, coach also. Okay,
To get out there and explore the resources that are available.
fantastic. And I'm happy to share more resources after we are done today. So, I'm going to tell you a quick story. And this has nothing to do with the job search for me, but it does have to do with the job search in general. So, one time I was tasked with finding a person to fill a role in my department. I was the search chair, which is the person that coordinates all the activities for this process. The position had a lot of really unique requirements, kind of taking from different fields, industries, and skill sets. So we thought it was going to be really hard to find somebody to fill this position. I decided one night, randomly, to go to a comedy night at the Rose Bowl Tavern. And I met someone there who happened to sit at my table who was performing. We started talking in between performances, and I discovered that they had a lot in common with me. We were from the same area, rural communities in central Illinois. We happened to know the same people because our high schools were in a similar area. And then eventually, after the comedy night, we decided to meet up again. When we met up, we started talking about our jobs, and she mentioned, hey, this is what I've been doing, and here's what I'm looking to do now. And somehow she happened to fit exactly what we were looking for. It was crazy. So I invited her to apply. She interviewed. It was a competitive role, but she stood out and was hired. Everybody loves her. It's been a year on the job, and she is fantastic. And she's also one of my close friends now. So I often tell this story to students about the importance of networking, but it's also a story that I'm using in interviews because I am on the job search right now, to talk about how I have sourced candidates for roles in a non-conventional way. Right now I'm looking to get into HR, specifically talent acquisition. I do a lot helping people on this side of the coin, and I also know a lot about what recruiters do and what employers are looking for because I work with them all the time. And so I hope to transition into that. Oh, lovely, thank you. So, what did you notice about the story that I just told? Anything that stood out to you? Anybody? Yes. Okay, say that again. Yes, I used my connections to fulfill a need in my professional environment. Awesome. What else? a broad scope and then narrowed it down to why you should care about anything that I'm saying. Anything else? Say that one more time. Yes, the person I met happened to be a perfect fit for the role. And another reason why I tell this story is because you never know who you're going to meet and who you're going to talk to and what kind of opportunities might come up. So you really have to be curious. You have to put yourself out there and maybe try things or go to things that you wouldn't normally or wouldn't consider in your own life. So we're going to talk a little bit more about storytelling, and I love that I'm doing this in a library because there are stories all around us, true and fictional, but the story we're talking about today should be true. We want to tell honest stories when we're on the job search. I've met with a lot of students to practice interviews, and they have panicked on the spot and made up stories to answers or to questions that I've had, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't have to make up stories. I'm sure there's something from your past or your skill set that we could tell that's actually true and relevant for this question. So we're gonna do a little bit of like reflecting on ourselves today, mostly inwardly, not outwardly, because some of the questions might be personal. We're gonna talk about how do you know what employers actually are looking for, in a broad sense, but also in a specific sense, whether you're targeting a specific role, industry, or company that you want to work for. And then we're going to do a little practice if you're up for it and the environment is conducive to that. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, great. All right, so let's dive in. When you probably saw the title, you were like, why are we talking about storytelling? In the job search, storytelling really is being able to communicate your motivation. So why you're on the job search, what you're looking for, what's motivating you for a specific role, your skills, so how you're qualified, and then your experiences, what evidence you have that makes you qualified for what you're seeking. And all this communication is to the employer, whatever employer it is that is in charge of the hiring process that you might be involved in. And we want it to be impactful, and we're going to talk a little bit about why. Okay, so how do we make our storytelling impactful? There are a lot of steps to kind of putting together a good story. So let's talk about the first step in our job search context. So the first step, you need to understand yourself, right? You need to know what are your career goals. So what kind of positions are you interested in? For me, I'm transitioning from education into HR and talent acquisition. That's my current career goal. Maybe there's a place in the United States or in the world that you want to work, and you need to figure out what is your skill set and how you can connect that to a job. But you need to know what you're aiming for, right? That's the first place to start. You can also think about, like, if you're not sure what you're aiming for, what drives you or excites you? If you think about like your day-to-day activities, or if you are currently employed and you think about your current job, when do you find yourself getting really excited about a task that's been assigned to you? Or you find that you've lost track of time because you're enjoying what you're doing or you're finding it so interesting. What is it that gets you out of bed every day? And how can you connect that to your career goals? You also want to think about what's important to you in a career and your work environment. Because you could find a role that's really exciting and interesting, but if the work environment doesn't align with what's important to you, then you may not find that your colleagues are as excited or interested in what you're doing. They may not be as supportive or supportive in the way that you need. So you also have to think about what it is that you really need to be successful in a work environment. So thinking about your past experiences in work, or again, some of the things that you've maybe done outside of work, environments that you've been in, what have made those positive environments? When have you felt supported? When have you felt like you could talk to your people in your group, your community, whatever it is? What are the characteristics of those people? Those kinds of things. And then you want to think about your strengths. So what is it that you're good at? What do you do well? Again, this could be in your personal environment. This could also be in a work environment. But what is it that you do well? For me, one of my top strengths is empathy. I'm very good at talking to people, getting to know them, understanding their feelings, what makes them tick, and then helping them through difficult situations. I mean, the job search is not easy. I hate that I'm back on the job search myself. It's very stressful. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of brain power. So my empathy is very helpful in helping students in finding jobs, especially after graduation and in a very difficult job market. And then the last thing you want to think about is what are the relevant skills and experiences that you bring to the table? So where are times that you've used your strengths, or where are times that you've developed important skills that help you in your current environment or your current job? So these are the things that you really want to think about and have a good understanding of before you start just applying to jobs. Because if you have a little bit better understanding of who you are and what you're looking for, you're going to be able to tell better stories that the employers are going to be excited about. Does that make sense? Okay. So the second step to this process is understanding what the heck the employer is looking for. So once you've kind of narrowed down some job titles, companies, places in the country, industry that you want to get into, you kind of need to know what the employer is looking for. So this is where you make that connection. So there are a lot of studies and surveys out there that are trying to understand in a broad sense what is important to employers. So this is a survey that was done by LinkedIn, which if you don't use LinkedIn, it's a very helpful self-marketing, networking, and job search tool. So these are the top 10 skills from 2024 based on this LinkedIn study. So you'll see communication, customer service, leadership, project management, analytics, teamwork, sales, problem solving, research, and the top skill of the moment is adaptability. Can anybody guess why adaptability is really important right now? Yes?
I would think it's pretty important because fast-moving technological innovations growing all the time.
Yes, technological innovations. They're happening very rapidly and increasingly so, especially with artificial intelligence. Yes? Yes, exactly. And it's not just AI. I'm sure there are other technologies too that aren't being talked about as much or are in development that we're all going to have to learn and embrace. And so you need to be able to do that. It's very, very important to employers. If you look at the next survey, this one is done based on what employers are looking for from recent graduates, so students that have just finished college. And you'll see a lot of the same skills in this survey. And this is done with employers across the country. I think they usually get around 80 different employers to respond to this. So we have problem solving. Again, you see communication skills. Adaptability is a little bit lower than I would have anticipated, but also maybe they assume that college students these days maybe kind of already have that inherently. Some other ones I want to point out: ability to work in a team, and analytical skills. We're seeing a lot of emphasis from our employers, at least in the business world, on analytical and data science. So being able to take data and make meaning of it, and then also tell a story about the data to someone who has no idea how to analyze it, is a very, very important skill that is becoming increasingly so. So these are kind of like the broad skills that you want to be thinking about either developing if you don't feel like you have strengths in these areas. But if you do, then these are the kinds of stories that you want to start thinking about. So times that you communicated effectively, times that you've worked in a team and you succeeded, and what was the outcome, times that you solved problems. You want to have some of these ideas and stories in your head. Because you're going to have to eventually interview. Someone's going to ask you for evidence, and you want to be prepared to give it. Does that make sense? Now, every employer is unique, and and every company has different values and goals and roles that they need to fill. So once you get into the application process and you're like, okay, this job sounds cool, I want to apply. There's one place you can go to get a very good sense of what is specifically required and what the employer is specifically looking for that role, and that's the job description. So this is available to everyone who's applying. You can again find it on any job search platform like LinkedIn, Indeed, wherever you're going to look for jobs. And here's just a quick way to decode a job description on your own. Later, we're going to talk about how to use AI to decode your job description because it's a lot quicker. But if you're applying to a lot of jobs and you don't have time to copy and paste, you can kind of just do a quick scan. So I usually like to look for what are the keywords that I keep seeing repeated in the job description. What are some of the unique aspects of the job that maybe make it different than another job that I might be applying for? And then what are the technological skills or tools that this job is requiring? So in yellow, I have highlighted the word valuation. I keep seeing it repeated. That seems to be the theme of what this job is, working with evaluation in the industry of banking. So probably in yellow, you're going to be needing to have specific coursework. You're going to need to show an interest in this theme, and you're going to maybe need to have some experience with this area of business. In green, I highlighted teams. That's those skills that we saw from the broader surveys that we looked at. You're going to be working in teams, so you're going to need to showcase in all of your storytelling some kind of experience in a team. In blue, we have presentations, marketing materials, discussions. Those are your communication skills. So you're going to need to highlight communication skills, and ideally, if you've ever given a presentation or had a discussion, whether that's in a group, in a team, or one-on-one, you want to be able to talk about that. In red, we have our data, research, analytical skills. Looks like you're going to need to highlight those for this job as well. In pink, we have our technological skills. It's saying you need to be proficient in Microsoft Office. So you better have, if you don't have proficiency, work on developing real quick. And if you do, you better have it explicitly mentioned, especially on your resume, because that's the entry point to this process. And then in gray, we have a skill that doesn't come up as often in some of the surveys, because I think it's kind of built into some of the other ones, like professionalism or work ethic, but it looks like you're going to need to have good time management skills. So then going back and thinking about where are times in my personal life or in my professional life that I have had to use time management to get through my day or to meet a goal or a deadline. So that's kind of how I real quickly scan a job posting and try to pick out what it is most important to this job, and then try to categorize it for myself so that as I'm putting together my resume or my cover letter, I make sure that I'm highlighting these things in some way, shape, or form. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions about this process? Has anyone tried to do this before? Yeah, very important, because a lot of positions these days are getting like hundreds of applications, especially in the business industry. So you want to make sure that you're spelling it out very plainly to the employer that you meet their qualifications. And we'll talk a little bit later about how that translates for a recruiter or a hiring manager or whoever it is that's looking at your resume. Okay, so we talked about resumes and a little bit about interviewing. Where else do we have opportunities to tell our stories in the job search process? Does anybody have any ideas? What are some other touch points you might have with an employer or somebody invested in this process? Yes? Cover letter, yes. Employers do still require cover letters. Not all, but I think it's a good opportunity to tell more of a narrative, especially if you're like switching industries or maybe it's your first time applying. Your cover letter gives you a good chance to make connections that maybe your resume cannot. Like if someone's to look at my resume right now, all my experience has been in higher education. So I need to have a cover letter probably to be like, hey, these are the transferable skills I have, why I'm interested in talent acquisition, where I've kind of dabbled in that in this education industry, and then how it translates to their industry. Where else might you be able to tell your story? Yes. Were you raising your hand or pointing? Raising, okay, yes. Yes, on your resume, absolutely. LinkedIn profile, yeah, there's an About Me section. That's another nice place to kind of talk more broadly about your career path and your interests and your goals and your skills. And then the last one would just be like networking opportunities. So again, like when I met Cass at Broad Comedy and we were talking about what we do for a living, I didn't have like hours to tell her my entire story. So I had to condense it down in a way that made sense. And that was an opportunity for me to share, her to share, and then we made that connection that, hey, maybe she should apply for this job. So yes, good job, awesome. We got networking, resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, and interviewing. So what we're gonna do for the next half of today is actually dive into each of these areas, and we're gonna have a little bit of discussion, and then we're also gonna maybe practice a little bit if you are up for it, no pressure. And the one thing that I like to share to kind of drive home why storytelling and doing all of this work with yourself and all of this research and prep is because time is very limited, especially on the recruiting, hiring, HR side of things. Again, they're getting hundreds of applications for a lot of positions. You only have so many pages of a resume that you get to submit to tell your story. You only have so much time on the recruiting side of things to review a resume. A lot of days now, or a lot of times now, recruiters are only spending like 7 to 15 seconds looking at your resume. That is not a lot of time. And when you get into the interview process, you maybe have 30 minutes with the hiring manager, or an hour with the CEO of the company, or with the professors if you're going into academia. You only have so much time. So you really want to make the most of it. And that's why this is really important. So yes, all of this work will help make you memorable. It will help you stand out, especially if the stories you tell are connected to things that are specific or unique. It helps provide evidence that you've used skills and you've been successful. It helps build a personal connection. A lot of times the stories we tell, they have a lot of details and that they may help you connect to another person. Again, finding things in common, finding something really interesting that you've never heard of before. Having an emotion tied to your story helps people connect with you. Shows that you know your value, so you know what you're talking about. That also helps you be confident. And confidence goes a very, very long way in the job search process. I've seen a lot of people who maybe don't fit all of the skills and qualifications of a job, but their confidence helped them land that opportunity. Now, whether I agree with that or not is a different story, but that's what happens in the workplace and in the hiring process. So here's just a quick little example, kind of how this might play out. Again, forgive me, this is from a student perspective, but let's see, we have Tanya here. Tanya's like, okay, thinking about my time in college, I've developed these 4 big skills: teamwork, data analytics, communication, problem solving. I've managed to find an industry, a company, and a role that requires these skills, and they are essential to that job. And now I'm going to think about, as Tanya, when is a time that I've used these skills successfully? If you can figure out a story where they all come together, like this one, in my class, I worked on a team project where I utilized my communication skills to analyze whatever it is they were analyzing. And that's a great way to kind of connect everything together. So does that make sense? Kind of show you how this all works in a process? Okay. So let's dive into these different areas of where you can tell your story. So the first one we'll dive into is networking. So there's like a kind of faded picture of an elevator in the background. Has anyone heard of the elevator pitch? Yeah. This comes from this idea that you might get on an elevator with the CEO or a recruiter or someone important that works at a place that you want to work for, or maybe where you're currently working and you're trying to get promoted, whatever it is. And you only have as much time to get from floor 16 to, I don't know, 20 or 4 to 16, whatever, to tell this person who you are, why they should remember you, or maybe consider you for an opportunity. So that's kind of where it comes from. I just like to call it a self-introduction because a lot of times you're not going to be on an elevator when you're needing to tell your story. Like in this kind of setting, you might be at a job fair. You might be online. You might be reaching out over LinkedIn with a cold email or a cold message. You might be standing in line at Starbucks. You might be in this room. You might be at a comedy night. So you want to have something succinct that you're ready to tell, but it doesn't have to be like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, but you don't want it to be more than 5 minutes of talking about yourself because you eventually want to get into a conversation, if that makes sense. So these are kind of like the basic elements that I like to think of as a self-introduction in like a professional networking setting. It can be a little more casual and maybe less organized in a more less professional setting, like in the line of Starbucks. But a professional setting, these are the things that you definitely want to make sure to include. So obviously you want to include your name so that they know who you are. And then whatever your educational, vocational, professional, whatever kind of experience you have, whether you went to college, have a university degree, or specific vocational training or not, whatever it is that you're aiming for, what is your background that has you kind of set up for this opportunity? And then why? Like, what are your motivations? And what are the goals, skills, and experiences that go along with that? And then I always like to end with a question to kind of like get the conversation going. So depending on the setting, your question will have to be tailored to that. So if it's at a job fair and you're talking to a company, then your question might be about the company. So what do you like about working for Kohl's? And then you get to hear about it, get the conversation going, and then you ask follow-up questions. If it's in the line of Starbucks, it might be, what do you do for a living? And then they go into their self-introduction. If it's in this kind of setting, you might be like, well, why are you here today? And what are you hoping to achieve with this information? So what I'd like us to do, are we up for this? We're gonna pair up and just practice talking to each other and including these points in our introduction. So thumbs up if you're like, cool with it. You may not have much of a choice because there's only 4 of us. So why don't we pair up? Let's do you and you and you and you and introduce yourself to each other. You get as close as you feel comfortable, but make sure that you can hear each other. And I'll give you just a couple minutes to practice. And then we'll talk about it. I won't stare at you while you do it. Okay, I'm going to stop you there because I heard a little bit of a lull. I want to congratulate you because I saw some very good active listening skills being used. I saw good eye contact, people facing each other, respecting social distancing, head nods, smiles. Great, those are also important in addition to the verbal aspects of what we're doing. How did it go? Did you feel like your self-introduction was pretty good?
I have to use several. I have not several initiating full introduction out before I have to stop.
Yeah, so practicing it maybe on your own before you practice it with another person. Yeah, because it's hard to come up with information and keep it organized on the spot without practicing it ahead of time. Any other thoughts about your self-introduction? Okay, so think about this, especially as you start getting out there and networking with people. This is a great sort of way to get yourself introduced without a lot of awkwardness. If you've got something prepared, you can walk up with confidence. All right? Okay, so we're gonna move into the next piece, which is resumes. And if you'd like to return to your seat for now, you may. So, resumes again are kind of like beyond, the networking and getting to know people in the field that you're interested in or the company you want to work for, whatever that sort of sphere is that you're talking to people in. Your resume is really like the first step in the application process, your first foot in the door in a formal sense. So this piece of paper, this digital document, CV, resume, whatever you call it, is the first thing they're gonna see, and they being the recruiter, hiring manager, whoever it is. And so this is hopefully going to get you invited to an interview. So it's really, really important that you're comprehensive, you're relevant, and you're concise with this document, because you're not gonna have a chance to really talk to anybody out loud if you don't have your things in order on this document. So this is my resume right now. It needs updating. I need to tailor it a little bit better to the industry that I'm trying to get into. I'm right now feeling very overwhelmed about going through that process. I've done a little bit of tweaking, but it needs some more work. So you'll see I have 10 plus years of experience in education, so I have 2 pages. If you have less than 5 years of experience, usually your resume should be about 1 page. If you're going into academia, that's a whole other story where you can have tons of pages because you have research, you have publications, presentations, talks, whatever. So resume includes some of the basic things: your name, your contact information. If you have any education or training, that is usually on there, and then whatever kind of experience you have, whether that's part-time, full-time, volunteer, something like a side hustle, you own your own business, whatever it is that goes in your experience section. And then sometimes, generally, you have a skills section where you kind of highlight more of those technical skills that might be required for a job. If you need certain languages, or feel like if you know foreign languages or other languages and that's helpful for the role, you can highlight that there too. So your sections and what you include will vary. It will depend on what kind of experience you have and what kind of role you're applying for. But generally, you'll see that every experience has some description with bullet points. So what I'm going to talk about next are how you make these descriptions relevant and impactful. Not so much about formatting and organization and structure, because there are a lot of resources out there you can find that can help you with that. We're focusing on the storytelling piece today. So for me, as I'm transitioning, I've been using AI a lot. I've been using ChatGPT. So I found a position this morning that I thought was interesting. Unfortunately, it's not in the country that I'm hoping to work in. But it's similar to a lot of the roles that I've been finding. So I took the whole job description from LinkedIn and I copy and pasted it into AI. And I said, what should I highlight on my resume for this job application? And AI was very nice. It says, it'd be glad to help. I'm happy to hear that. And it gave me some interesting information, specifically for my resume. So it gave me top priorities to emphasize, 3 categories, so writing and content development experience. So anytime that I've done any professional writing or editing, any kind of like translation, taking information that is maybe highly technical or specialized, and then translating it into a way that any of us in this room could understand. And then any experience highlighting, recruiting, working with technological tools that assist with this process. And then different kinds of content types that I may have created, whether that's emails to candidates, articles, job aids, newsletters. And I have done a lot of this in education and in the different roles that I've had, but I'm not really talking about it that explicitly right now on my resume. So I need to do that. And then optional sections to add or modify. Professional summary, I probably need one of those because I'm transitioning from one industry to the next. So on my resume, it would probably be helpful to have a couple lines about why I'm submitting this very education-focused resume into a more industry-focused job. And then key skills, and this goes probably back to kind of what we were doing when we were decoding the job description ourselves. I probably could have picked out some of this just by going through and scanning it. So using some of these keywords, like I may not have content strategy and writing in my resume right now, but if I've done it, I can use those keywords to describe my experience, even though it's not described that way in my current field. So I just wanted to highlight that AI can be really helpful in this sort of like decoding the job description and also helping you figure out what it is you need to focus on for your resume for a specific job. Any questions about what I did here and how this might be helpful or not? Make sense? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about our descriptions and how we talk about our experiences and the stories that we're telling on our resumes. So from students, I review a ton of resumes, and I often see resumes with really short descriptions like this. And when I'm looking at them, I'm like, okay, we're off to a good start. What do you all think about these descriptions? Yes? They're vague.
I'm wondering, like, what if you use paper spreadsheets, what technologies are working with, any impacts that
Yeah, so what technology were they using to create spreadsheets? Was this Google Sheets? Was this Excel? Was this, I don't know, some other tool? What was the outcome? Like, why are they doing it? What did they achieve? Great, nice. What else? Yes?
Be more specific about what skills were useful at the job.
Yeah, so what skills did they use to achieve these things or do these things? Were they technical? Were they more on like the people side of things? Provided good customer service. I don't know what they mean by good customer service. I know what I think is good customer service, but are we on the same page? I don't know. There's not enough detail. So this would probably be a more impactful way of talking about this very hypothetical job that I made up. So you can see skills in these verbs that we have at the beginning. Words like tracked, prepared, communicated. Those are types of skills. You can see they used Excel, so we know the technical skill that they used. And we can also see some outcomes. So we have some numbers in here, even some statistics. They were able to determine that they've been saving, or they've been able to achieve 98% budget accuracy by using Excel and tracking these things. With the number 300 customers, you can see that they've prepared a lot of invoices. And if that's a key aspect of this, whatever job they're applying for next, they have a good depth of experience in doing that. And then lastly, we can see exactly what they mean when they say customer service. They mean listening actively, assessing needs, and meeting daily sales goals. If they knew what the daily sales goals were and that they were meeting, they could even add a number in there. Meeting a daily sales goal of, I don't know, $1,000. It's probably more than that, but I'm just making that up. So do you see how that's a lot more impactful than what we saw at the beginning? Yeah. So I like to call this approach to putting together impactful descriptions, and by I mean I get this from my college. I have no idea who came up with this technique. If you Google it, you probably won't find it anywhere. I think we made it up. But what it stands for is skill-oriented, results-based, relevant resumes. And when I'm writing descriptions for my experiences, I always try to answer these 3 questions if possible. So when I'm sitting down and I'm like, okay, here's something new that I've done in my job. For example, I just got to lead a study abroad program to Brazil. It is actually not in my job description, but I want to talk about it on my resume because there was some leadership experience that I got out of that I want to highlight. So I want to think about, okay, what did I do leadership-wise in this experience? What were the skills that I used to lead this group of students, keep them alive, and return back to the United States successfully and hopefully having learned something? And then how did I do it? How did I use that skill? So I led this group. How did I lead them? Well, I set a positive example by respecting the culture that we were in, learning the language, some of the language, trying to try some of the local food. I communicated with them on a regular basis so that they knew what the agenda and schedule was for the day. They knew where they needed to be at what time, what we were going to be doing, what items they needed to bring. And then at the end of the day, what did I accomplish? What I accomplished is, again, I kept these students alive. I'm not going to write that explicitly on my resume, but they had a positive experience. They learned something. They grew in their knowledge in the content area that the program was focused on, blah, blah, blah. So if you could try to answer those 3 questions broadly, but also for each description on your resume, you're going to have the details that whoever's looking at it needs to understand the impact and the value and the relevancy of your experiences. Does that make sense to everyone? So what did you do? How did you do it? And what did you accomplish? And if you're using technical tools, you want to say exactly what technical tools you used. If that's a point of sale system, great. If that's let's say you're working at FedEx in the warehouse. If you are operating a forklift, say that you were operating that forklift. And then what did you accomplish? If you can add numbers. If you saved time because you automated some kind of system, try to figure out how much time you're saving people. If you made an organization, a business money, try to figure out what your contribution to that amount of money was. So in some sense, you kind of have to keep track of what you're doing while you're doing it. I've been kind of jotting down numbers right now for my job. We got 44% increase in professors asking us to come in to the classroom and talk about these kinds of topics to students. So I can say on my resume that I've built relationships with professors in the college, and I have contributed to a 44% increase in requests to come in and talk to students. And right now we measure our success in our college and in our office by reach, by number of classes we get into, number of students that we talk to. That's probably not the best way of doing it, but that's what we do right now. So does that make sense? Okay. So let's talk about interviews, because I know we're probably getting close to time. What time is it, Kat, if you don't mind?
We got 15 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, this is the last topic. So, if you're successful on your resume and it catches a recruiter, a person's attention, and they're like, okay, I can see on paper this person does have, what we need, but we want to talk to them more because we need more evidence. We want to hear what they have to say. We also want to see, what their personality is like. Are they going to be a good fit for our culture? Those kinds of things. So you get invited to an interview. It might be virtual. It might be in person. There are a lot of different kinds of interview formats. Nowadays, there are also recordings. I just applied for a job where I had to record myself talking about 3 key points. It was super awkward. I didn't like it. I don't know if I did a good job, so I'm going to need to practice that for myself because that's becoming more common. In terms of what you get asked to do or talk about, these are kind of the most common right now. So in every interview, you're probably going to get asked, tell me about yourself. So if we go back to that self-introduction that we practiced earlier, you can use that format to answer this question too. You also probably want to make sure you explain why you're applying for the job. If they don't ask you that directly, it's still good to include. And then we have questions like motivational, which is kind of going to be why are you applying for this position? Why this company? Why this area of the country? Whatever it might be, what are your motivations? What are you hoping to gain from this experience or from this job? And then we also have situational. So they might give you a scenario okay, you're working at McDonald's and a team from track in a huge bus pulls in and there's all these kids in the lobby and they all want to order and get their food and they're really loud and some of them are complaining. How would you handle this situation? And then you would explain your approach. We also have technical questions, so this might be more about like technology and your experience using it. It may also be like about specific duties to the job. So earlier when we were looking at that one that required valuation and banking, you might have to talk about like some of the theory behind it or how you might get to solve a valuation problem or how you would model it or what you learned in class. So this is like kind of like content knowledge. And then there are the questions I really hate, but people use them and they have rationale and I guess sometimes it makes sense. Problem solving and critical thinking questions. So these are like, you're like math questions you used to answer like in grade school. If you went to grade school, like a train is traveling like this many miles per hour and there's another train coming this way, blah, blah, blah. How many minutes do you need to like hit the brakes on the train before you collide with the other train or whatever? So they're trying to like understand how you break down problems and think about them and identify solutions. And I agree, there are jobs where that's really important and these questions can be helpful in assessing that. I just sometimes get thrown off when I get asked them myself because I'm like, what does this have to do with the job? Like, how many ducks are in this pond if we remove 2 ducks but then 3 more join and then the mom has a baby and or a litter of, or whatever it is for ducks. Anyway. I'm getting on my soapbox about this question. So those are some of the types of questions you might encounter. What we're going to talk about specifically today are behavioral questions because these are really, really common. And they look like this. So a behavioral question would be, tell me about a time you faced a challenge working in a team. So what a recruiter, hiring manager is trying to do is get you to talk about a past experience and determine whether or not and how you would handle that same experience in the future. So you have to come up with an example to answer this question from your past experience and explain it in a logical, clear, compelling way. So how do we feel about this answer right now that we see to this question? I felt lost and confused. I hope my teammates wouldn't find out. I tried to help. My team carried most of the project. I'm glad they didn't notice how lost I was. Can we really like tell much about what this person might do in the future on a challenging team?
I think, no, I think the person really kind of got stuck at the full sort of just kind of explaining the situation but didn't have like any kind of outcome.
Yeah, they're just explaining how they felt about the project, and there's no like action to figure things out. There's no outcome. I mean, in general, it's probably not a good approach, whether you describe it this way or not. So let's talk about a method, not a good story. Let's talk about a method that you can use to answer these kinds of questions. Have you heard of the STAR method before? Okay, a couple head nods, a couple head shakes. Great. This is a method that you can use to structure your answers to these kinds of questions. So the first step is you need an example. So going back to like those broad skills we talked about earlier that all employers are looking for, when you're in the job search process, I would try to have some examples written down somewhere or typed out somewhere that you can look at and go back to before you ever do an interview, because you're probably going to get asked about those skills in some way, shape, or form. But also looking at the job description, you can also kind of predict what you might get asked about. So you need that example. But then you need to actually explain the example out loud. So that's where this method comes into play. So you have the situation, which is going to be just the bare amount of information that a person would need to know about this situation so that they can understand it. So that would be like where you were working, who you were working with, It might be the place in your career. Was this like your first job? Was this your most recent job? That kind of information. Then you move into the task. So the task is really the heart of the question. So if they're asking you about a challenging team that you worked on, then you're going to talk about why the team was challenging and what you were trying to achieve as a team. If they're asking you about a presentation that you gave that was successful, then you're going to talk about what was the presentation and what were you trying to communicate to your audience. Then you're going to get into the steps that you took. So if we're talking about the presentation, you're probably going to talk about the steps you took to understand your audience, tailor it to them, and prepare for the presentation. If it's working in a challenging team, you're going to talk about the steps you took to make things less challenging. And then the last step is talking about the result. So what was the outcome? So again, going back to the challenging team, were you able to solve whatever that problem was, and then did you achieve what you were trying to achieve as a team? So maybe that was putting together a new floor set at a clothing store. Somebody kept messing the floor plan up. You had to take them aside and talk to them and get them to understand what the goal was and what the other team members were doing to achieve the goal. And then you were able to get it together, and then the next day a bunch of customers came in, they were really excited about the clothing, and you made a bunch of money at the store. So that would be the outcome. So a lot of times when I'm working with students on practicing these questions, they spend a lot of time talking about the situation and the task. They want to share all the details and tell me all their woes and all of the things that were going on. And then there's not a lot of time to get to the action, and sometimes they don't even share the result, like what the outcome was. So you really want to spend the least amount of time in your answer to a behavioral question on the situation and the task. Most of your time should be spent talking about the steps you took for that situation and the outcome of your actions. That's what the person on the other end of the interview wants to hear. So that's really important. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's a better example of what it could look like for this person who was trying to answer this question. So they're assigned a project. As a group, they decided what to focus on. They need to know the client and the problem. She's feeling very overwhelmed and embarrassed. So that's the situation. The task. The meeting is approaching. She needs to tell them that she's confused. She's realized that that's the only way to move forward. So she does, and everyone else is also confused. So they get together, and as an action, they decide they're going to reach out to the client and try to get more information. Like, what is this problem we're trying to solve? What questions do we have? What are our concerns? They get a meeting scheduled, they get more information. The result is they now understand the problem and they know what steps they need to take. So they gather their research, they present 5 solutions, the client's happy and implements some of those solutions with great results for their small business. I don't know, again, maybe they made some money, maybe they were able to get some new clients, whatever it is. So that's how it would be better communicated. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so in the time remaining, we are going to practice. How much time do we have?
We've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, that's perfect. If this is rough for you, don't worry. That's why it's important to try to prep and practice ahead of time. So I know we're doing this on the spot, but we're just gonna try. I'm not evaluating you. Please don't be evaluating each other. Just give it a go. So let's get back with our partners. And I want you to try to tell each other, using the STAR method, about a time you solved a challenging problem. And again, this can be from personal life, professional life, I don't care, a challenging problem, whatever it was. Just use the STAR method. Good. It's funny, it's like much better not saying it. Did you get to the result over here in your pairs? Did you talk about the outcome?
Yes.
Okay. I overheard that maybe we forgot the outcome in this other pair over here. And that happens a lot, and I do it myself. So I always try to like tell people like, when you're done talking about what you did, ask yourself, so what, then what? If you can remember that, then you can remember to share the outcome. Awesome. Okay, so we did a lot. I talked a lot. You talked some. Are there any final questions before we wrap up today? I know it's hot. I'm sweating. All right. Well, thank you for your attention, and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Claire, and I appreciate you all for coming. Just
Yes,
as
me too.
a reminder, we do this last Thursday of every month. Next month, we have the Alejandra from the Unemployment Service is going to come. She's going to have the resources they have there. I also have a sheet up here that has a list of emails. If you want to get upcoming emails about career services from me, feel free. We also have a job fair that's going to be in this room tonight in the manufacturing sector, so that's something to think about. And then don't forget, I always offer career services myself, so if you need a one-on-one appointment, if you want to practice interviewing, if you want to practice telling your own story, let me know. I love to help out with that stuff. I promise I will build you up. It will not be scary. But thank you again. I really appreciate it.